journey towards that particular point?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. First of all, there are clues. You know, there are an infinite number of clues. Those clues include many things. They include the assurance that's given us in the scriptures, you know, and not just blind statements, but wonderful stories that are there that illustrate precisely what it means to experience bhakti, to experience the divine. Stories about God such that we understand what is the nature of the divine and why we even should have devotion toward the divine. We have clues, many clues, in the form of our own experiences. You know, this gets back to several of the things I was talking about earlier in talking about this verse. One thing that is wonderful about being on this path is that when you follow the path, not constantly, but you will have experiences such that you will experience the divine. You know, it may not be on a constant state, but we have glimpses every so often. Again, this is what is meant by sadhana. This is why in the beginning it's difficult and why we have to, yes, force ourselves to follow a discipline until it comes to the point where we experience it effortlessly. But even in the beginning, we'll be in meditation and there are times when we feel nothing. There are times when we can barely concentrate. But then there will be times when we will just have this rush of bliss come over us. And we understand that this bliss is in actuality one of the attributes of our own soul. This gives us an indication that there is indeed something wonderful within. Now, having this experience of our own soul, and thus understanding that, yes, I do have a soul, because I'm experiencing it. I'm experiencing this calm, this inner peace. I'm experiencing that I don't need externality. Here I am, I'm sitting with my eyes closed, without external sounds, not moving, and yet I'm experiencing a world within. Thus, there is a soul. Then, of course, the next logical question is to ask ourselves, well, is that soul its own origin? Is it its own creator? And logically it cannot be, because it's finite, because it's something that is finite, you know? And how do we know that it's something that is finite? Because we know that it's something presently in illusion. If it weren't, we wouldn't be having to do all this meditation. we wouldn't have to be doing sadhana in order to realize the soul. If the soul were God, if the soul were infinite, thus the soul itself must have something that preceded it, that was its cause. Okay? That can only be the divine. How can it only be the divine? Because we know that our soul is not alone. Because in the same way that we know we have a soul, we can infer this person has a soul, that person, every living being has a soul. What can be so great such that an infinite number of souls, each one of which is so marvelous, came from it? Give it any name you want, but that's the divine. That's the divine. So again, in this process of honest logic, you know, looking within ourselves, having these experiences, and then analyzing what is the nature and the meaning of these experiences, we can understand that there is God. We can understand first that there is soul. You see how you understand now why I repeat this all the time, that the process to liberation is twofold. First we understand self, then we understand God. First Atma Jnana, then Brahma Vidya. First we begin by understanding ourselves. But then once we understand that, okay, I am that eternal Atman, it is natural, if we are honest with ourselves, that we have to ask, okay, now that I understand I am Atman, what is the source of Atman? You see? And this is the conclusion that we come to.
That moment of joy that comes into being when you meditate.
That's the beginning. Yeah. The joy and the bliss is actually the beginning, interestingly. Even a person who has never meditated before and can sit down and meditate for the first time, if they do it well, they can experience that bliss. Again, what they are experiencing is let me explain it this way. They are experiencing the outer wave of an attribute of their own consciousness, of their own self. That's what they're experiencing. You know, even then, in experiencing that bliss, they're not experiencing their full self. They're experiencing a wave of an attribute. that attribute being anandam, being bliss. Okay? In order to understand the true self, that takes time. That takes time. As far as glimpses into that, it's natural to have glimpses. However, this is what often blinds us from having full realization. We need to have vairagya. You know, we need to also be detached. We need to not worry about progress. It's an interesting thing. What you're going to find is that eventually it comes to the point where the sadhaka, the individual following sadhana, no longer worries about progress. The reason why is because they have had enough glimpses. They have experienced enough depth of their own consciousness such that they are, you know, to state this, this might sound very California-ish. They're happy just being on the wave. You know? They're just happy being on the wave. They understand that, yes, I can call it progress, but it doesn't matter. What's important is that I'm experiencing the bliss. I know I'm going in the right direction. And I understand that because I've had this affirmation that, okay, I have followed certain practices, and as a result, I've experienced several very good, beneficial, spiritual things that have occurred, I understand now that if I continue to do practices, and maybe even deeper practices, that will continue. And it will eventually come to the point where I will experience everything that I wish to know. This is what's meant by Shraddha. Shraddha. You know, what is sometimes translated as faith. I don't like that word. Assurance is a better word. Assurance. You know? I've explained this 100 times, that in Sanatana Dharma we don't believe in faith in the Abrahamic sense, which is more like blind faith. You know, even though it's illogical, even though it makes no sense, even though it's the opposite of everything that should be the case, I'm going to believe it anyway. That's blind faith. That we don't believe in. That's, you know, the Abrahamic religions. We believe in Shraddha, assurance, which is a type of faith, but it's a faith, an assurance that is based on the fact that we have experienced that having done this, it's worked in the past, that having done this, the promise has been true of what it has stated. Therefore, I can now assume that, yes, let me just go on and have trust. Have trust. You know? But this is the most important thing, is to have vairagya, detachment. Don't worry about progress so much. Worry about service. Service. This is why the greatest exhibition, the greatest fruit of bhakti is seva, is service. You know? So even in our meditation, as we're meditating, let us not have this in our mind that, oh yes, I'm meditating in order to progress myself, but rather I am meditating in order to serve the divine. You know? What does true love mean in this spiritual sense, to love God? It means to love God on God's own terms. For an individual who is on the path to liberation, what do they want? Well, they want to get out of this material world. They want to free themselves of illusion. Well, while on that path, what if finally they experience God, and God says, my desire for you is that actually you be in this world for 17 more lifetimes because you have a mission that I want you to perform. Well, at that point, what do we do? Do we have fidelity to the path? Or do we have fidelity to the goal of the path? Do we say to God, well, that's nice that you want me to do that, but no, this is my sadhana, that's my goal, is liberation, and I'm getting out of this world whether you like it or not. You see, at this point we understand that having that seva toward the divine, having that service attitude toward the divine is itself liberation. And that's the ultimate conundrum. That is what's amazing. Is that thinking about this in this way, well, now what does the path mean? The goal of the path has now been achieved, even though you haven't finished the path. Thus, the idea of progress, you know, the idea of incrementalism, the idea of 1 leading to 2, leading to 3, A leading to B, leading to C, is thrown out the window. So don't worry so much about progress. Worry instead about about seva and be as detached as you can while doing your sadhana.
I guess I understand. I think it's, if I haven't seen my father, that doesn't mean he didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, as far as proof for something, the more subtle a thing is, the more meaningless is the concept of proof. You know? Yes, even something as literally material as that. Yes, if I haven't seen my father, it doesn't mean he doesn't exist. If I haven't seen China, that doesn't mean there isn't such a nation as China. Oh, everyone's just making it up. All these people who come from China and claim that they came from a certain country, they're just saying that for my benefit, just to deepen my illusion. No, just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You know, this is the example I give all the time. We can't even see our own minds. None of you can prove to me that you have a mind. I can't see, touch, taste, feel, hear your mind. I can infer that you have a mind. I can guess that you have a mind because you are acting like beings who have minds. But I can't, oh, there it is. Oh, there's the mind. Oh, his is blue. You know, you can't prove to me that you have a mind. I can't prove to you that I have a mind. Oh, I guess there's no mind then. What is meant by the nature of proof? Empirical proof? Empirically, we can't prove many things, but we can infer. But then when it comes to, again, the subtlest of the subtle, when it comes to the divine, what is meant by proving the divine? At that point, we can only experience the divine in our own consciousness, and that's what proves. This is why we meditate. We meditate in order to refine our consciousness in such a way that God can become readily available to us in our consciousness. And then God's reality becomes more vivid to us than if God were to appear before my eyes. You know, that reality would seem so real in our consciousness of experiencing God that indeed if God were to appear before our eyes, that would seem like nothing. That would seem unreal. That's how vivid that realization, God realization, is. So. Yeah, and if you don't have devotion, it should mean nothing, you know. That's the problem. You used, you know, interesting word, rituals, ritualism. People use this word ritualism all the time. The truth of the matter is, any ritual, any practice actually, even meditation, even yoga, unless you have the right goal, the right attitude, unless you're doing it with devotion, unless you're doing it sincerely to know God, it's meaningless. You know, this is why even yoga, which is a sacred science, which was created in order to know God, today for so many Westerners has just become another aerobics, just another way to sweat. You know, it's become meaningless. But why? Their goal is not to do yoga to know the divine. It's when you have that bhakti, that devotion, that then ritual, yoga, puja, meditation, all of these things are invested with the deepest of meaning. You know, so yeah. You know, you explain this very well. You come from a culture where I'm sure you've experienced pujas all your life. And this is something which, you know, this is your first time here, but I talk about this a lot. You can go to any beautiful Hindu temple and you'll see a priest doing puja. And as he's doing the puja, you know, here's the Murti. He's offering with one hand, but he's kind of looking around, you know, to see, oh, what donor just walked into the door? Oh, do I know that person? Meaningless. Meaningless puja, but the way we do puja is not meaningless. Why? Because we are doing it with absolute focus. That very same seemingly material activity, and it's a material activity. What are you doing? You're taking a stick of incense and you're offering it, but if you have that devotion, it's no longer material. You now have invested it with a spiritual power such that now it's a meditation. See, true puja is meant to be meditative. In other words, as you're doing puja, first of all, it's nice to watch a priest doing puja. That's good too. But really, you need to do your own puja at home. And when you do it, You need to understand why you're doing it, and you need to understand that it is a form of active meditation, meditation in action, such that with everything that you are offering, you are focusing on the deity with devotion. And this is, people don't understand the ultimate meaning of puja. It's a very simple one. Again, I recited that verse from Bhagavad Gita. Sarva dharmam parityajya. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, abandon all these lesser varieties of just religiosity and simply surrender unto me. Simply surrender unto me. I will deliver you from all fear. When we are doing puja, what we are doing is a meditation such that we are training ourselves to surrender ourselves more and more to the divine with love, with trust. That's why we offer things. We offer incense stick. Okay? What are we doing? God needs that scent? No, God is the source of all wonderful scents. But what we're doing is not simply offering it to God because God needs it. What we're doing is symbolically saying, all the best that I have, I am offering as an offering at your feet with devotion. You see? So I'm offering you incense, not because I think you need incense, but because this is my practice. I'm training myself in such a way that I am opening myself to your grace. When we offer the deepa, when we offer the lamp, what are we saying? You, God, are actually the source of all lights. You don't need this little light. You don't need this little lamp. But symbolically, I am saying, if I could, I would take all of the light within this universe and offer it back at your feet because you are the source of all lights. You see? And on like this with each thing that we offer. And what we're doing is this. What is our greatest enemy spiritually? It's ego. It's ahankara, ego. It's this idea, I am the center, I am the center, I am the center of the world. Me, 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 it's all about me. When we are performing bhakti, including even with puja, again, done the right way, in the way I just described, what we are now doing is reversing that. We are saying, no, it's not all me, me, me. I am now in the center. Rather, even symbolically, but also in my consciousness, what I am doing is I am training my consciousness to understand you are in the center, you are in the center, you are in the center. That's puja. Every puja you've ever experienced growing up in Gujarat and Bharat, that really is what it was supposed to be. It may not have been that, unfortunately, because the people doing the puja maybe didn't quite understand what they were doing, but that is the origin of puja. It's a meditation such that we are attempting to elevate our consciousness by getting rid of the selfishness, this me, me, me consciousness, and saying instead, you, 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 the divine. You know?
Yourself aside.
Sure. Yeah. That's the nature of love. Absolutely. That's the nature of love. We're constantly thinking about ourselves until we have that first love. You know, at 16 or whatever, you know, we fall in love for the first time. Yeah, yeah. As a child, as a teenager, of course, it's always me, me, me. But then you fall in love for the first time, and then suddenly, oh, there's another person, and that person is the center of everything. And of course, yes, that's a more materialistic, you know, and all too often a very temporary form of this concept.
Especially when you're 16.
Yeah, especially when you're 16, it doesn't last. But yeah, you're right. You know, this is what we are seeking, but again, in the context of eternality and with God, the ultimate source of love. That yes, all of my life I have thought only me, 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 but now let me train myself in such a way that instead it's you. And I'm just going to end with this because I have to say this. Does this mean that we literally lose ourselves in God? Is this a scary thing? Well, for some people it's scary, but let me ask it this way. Should it be scary? No. This is what's amazing.
Nothing to lose.
Exactly. We have nothing to lose. We are not surrendering to another flawed human being like we have so many times. Indeed, falling in love with people who have hurt us, you know, or putting our trust in human beings who have... No. We are putting our faith, our trust, our lives, everything in the hands of the divine, who, again, is the source of all living beings, of all reality. God doesn't truly need us to surrender to Him. Really, when we surrender to God, we are doing this for ourselves because it helps us. It is in surrendering fully to God that we then know ourselves perfectly. That is the paradox. The more we think me, truthfully, the less happy we are. We've all seen this. The egotistical people, the selfish people, tend to be the most unhappy, the most anxiety-ridden people. But the more we get rid of that and say, no, you, what do we find? Do we find a lot of pure sages, and I mean truly pure sages, who are just riddled with anxiety? No. What we find is that the more you surrender yourself, the more peace you have, the more happiness you have. It is in surrendering yourself that you find yourself.